You know, for decades, we've all been promised flying cars to finally solve traffic, right? Well, guess what? They're here. Kinda. Just not at all in the way you're probably picturing.
I mean, all around the globe, cities are pouring billions into building the future of transport. They're trying to come up with these brilliant, innovative ways to get us all moving faster, more efficiently, building the transit system of tomorrow.
But what if? What if in this big race to build some super high-tech future, they're forgetting the most important piece of the puzzle? Something so fundamental that it could make or break the whole thing, no matter how cool the tech is.
Okay, so first up, flying over the gridlock. Let's actually look at one of these futuristic solutions in action. The thinking here is pretty simple, right? If you can't go through all that traffic, why not just, go over it?
And wow, this really shows you the promise. Take the Mexicable system in Greater Mexico City. For folks living in this hillside community, a commute that used to be a nightmare, we're talking up to an hour on clogged streets, has been cut down to just 17 minutes. Can you imagine? They are literally gliding over the gridlock.
And get this, the benefits go way beyond just saving time. We're talking about a system that now carries almost 30,000 people every single day. But what's really fascinating to me is the ripple effect. I mean, the project brought in new streetlights, paved roads. It even sparked this incredible wave of creativity, with artists painting over 50 murals along the route. It totally transformed the whole area.
And look, this isn't just some one-off thing in Mexico. Cities from Mumbai to Bogota are seriously looking to the sky to solve their traffic problems. It really feels like the future of urban transport is, well, looking up.
So you've got a faster commute, it's greener, more efficient, and it even makes neighborhood better. Sounds like the perfect solution, doesn't it? So problem solved? Well, not so fast.
Okay, section 2. What commuters really value. Because it turns out, when you and I are deciding how to get from point A to point B, how fast we get there isn't the only thing we're thinking about. In fact, it might not even be the first thing.
So this is fascinating. Researchers at the Inter-American Development Bank did this really clever study. They used mouse tracking. Basically, they hid all the different bits of info about a trip. The price, how long it would take, the CO2 emissions, and the local crime rates. Then they just sat back and watched what people clicked on first. And the results? They were absolutely stunning. People consistently went for crime and price info before they even bothered to check how long the trip was or how green it was.
And this wasn't some fluke. This was the core finding. The researchers put it super bluntly. Users place a high value on safety in public transportation. This is that missing element we talked about at the beginning. It's not just about getting from here to there, it's about getting there safely.
All right, section 3, the high price of fear. So just how high is that value? What's the actual real-world cost of fear when we're talking about our commute? Well, the numbers, they're pretty stark.
51%. Just let that sink in. That's how much extra, on top of the regular fare, commuters said they'd be willing to pay for just a 20% reduction in crime on their route. I mean, think about that. People are willing to pay more than half the ticket price again just to feel safer. And let's flip that around. The study estimates that if public transit simply felt safer, you could see ridership jump by 29%. That is a huge number of people switching from their cars to more sustainable options, and that shift would be driven entirely by making them feel secure.
And here's the real kicker. For a lot of people, the fear of crime just completely throws normal economic logic out the window. The study found that when crime is a big concern, the number of people you just can't convince to take public transit, no matter how cheap you make it doubles. For them, even a free ride just isn't worth the risk.
Okay, section 4, a policy blind spot? Because this has massive implications for how cities think about transport policy. I mean, if you don't factor in fear, all of your best laid plans, all that money, it could be totally useless.
Okay, let's get into a little bit of economics for a second. There's this concept called price elasticity. It sounds complicated, but it's not. It's just a way to measure how much our behavior changes when the price of something changes. So if you lower the bus fare and suddenly way more people start riding, that's elastic demand. If you lower the price and not much happens, it's inelastic.
And here is the absolute bombshell from this research. High crime makes public transit demand less elastic. To put it in plain English, when people are afraid, cutting the price of a bus ticket just doesn't work as well. All those subsidies cities use to try and get people to ride, they lose a ton of their power. And this isn't something that affects everyone the same way. The study found that while high crime makes everyone less responsive to price cuts, the effect is way, way more pronounced for women. Their willingness to change their behavior based on a cheaper fare drops much more sharply than it does for men. It's a stark reminder that safety in public transit is a deeply gendered issue.
So what does all this mean for the big picture, for creating those greener, more sustainable cities we all want? Well, it means we have to stop treating public safety and environmental policy like they're two totally separate things. They're not.
The research paper really just nails it with this quote. It says crime creates a negative externality on congestion and pollution. Basically, crime isn't just a social problem, it's an environmental one. By scaring people away from buses and trains, it's directly putting more cars on the road. And we all know what that means. More traffic, more pollution.
But here's the good news, the really hopeful part. The researchers did another experiment where they asked people how they'd spend a limited budget on transit improvements. And you know what they found? People don't see this as a trade-off. It's not safety or sustainability. Even when people were really worried about crime, their support for green policies like cutting emissions stayed just as strong. Turns out, people want both.
And that brings us to the final, most important takeaway here. The most effective way to get people out of their cars and onto public transit isn't just about building fancy new cable cars or faster trains. It's about making sure people feel safe on their journey. At the end of the day, the smartest green policies are also the smartest public safety policies. They're two sides of the same coin.
So, as we're planning the cities of the future, this leaves us with a really big question. We're all trying to build a greener world, right? But what this research really forces us to confront is this. Can our cities ever truly be green if they aren't safe first?